All right, welcome into GC Live. Happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Jack Veltri. Kendall Smith will not be joining me today, unfortunately, as she's actually out in Disney. So she's out there having a good time out in Orlando and, enjoying her time. So, we'll be rolling solo today, but we will be joined by a guest, Will Helms, who helps us out with analytics over at GamecockCentral.com. So, we'll have him on here in a little bit. But before we get rolling, talking about South Carolina football, talking about this Oklahoma game, looking a little bit back at the South Carolina-Alabama game over the weekend, want to talk to you guys about our main sponsor of the day, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. So if you're like me, you're living in an apartment right now, but you're looking to take the next step and potentially buy a home, but you don't know where to start, go ahead and give our guy Clint a call. He will be the perfect person to help you out with all of your housing needs. He's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time. He's a real long sponsor of Gamecock Central and all our GC Live shows, and he's a Gamecock fan. So definitely everything good right there. So if you're interested, give him a call at 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to clinthammond.com. And want to thank Clint for being a really long sponsor of Gamecock Central, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in. William, what's up, man? EXO, what's up? And now we're going to say hello to our special guest today, Will Helms. Will, how we doing, man?
Pretty good. How you doing, Jack?
I'm doing good. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk some Gamecock football. I know you had a lot to say on Twitter about this team and stuff, and wanted to start right there, man. Lenore Sellers, I think I'll go back and read the tweet, but you said South Carolina has a serious quarterback issue, and you clarified later on it's a freshman quarterback issue. Just talk to me about what you saw from Sellers in that Alabama game. Good, bad, whatever you saw. What was your overall assessment of the way he played?
Yeah, actually, today's analytics breakdown, I actually had to walk that back a little bit and say, okay, I've looked at a little bit more of the film. I've looked at some of the other guys, and I was being a little bit unfair to Lenore, who in the past, in fairness to me, I have been very high on Sellers. And I think Saturday just showed glimpses into some of the places for growth in his game, specifically with Skycam was offered Saturday, and I love anytime a big game offers Skycam. It lets you sit behind the quarterback and basically see what the quarterback sees. And basically, as we looked at that, one, I was surprised with how bad Alabama's secondary looked. But two, I was a little bit surprised at how Lenore Sellers wasn't able to make them pay as much for some of those defensive breakdowns that they had. And so one of the things that I saw is in his, in the first half, he looked a little bit timid. He looked a little bit slow to go through his progressions. And even when he did go through his progressions, a little bit timid to go ahead and trust his arm talent, just kind of fire it. And so that was something that I had to watch in the second half. And as South Carolina made some adjustments, it seemed to help a little bit. But then you end up with that breakdown that Alabama had, where they clearly had one guy covering two. And not only did Sellers make the wrong read, he made the bad throw to go from possibly a touchdown to 3rd and 18.
Yeah, and you guys can go ahead and check out Will's analytics report. Again, he's like the analytics guru for Gamecock Central, and he came out with a report today, what to make of Lenore Sellers, Shane Beamer's tenure, and the Oklahoma matchup. So definitely go check that out on GamecockCentral.com. Well, going off that with Sellers, one of the main issues in that game was, and you pointed this out in your story, the fumbles. And a lot of them have been this year, 2 weeks in a row now, with him and Robbie Ashford on the fake handoffs to Rocket Sanders. They'll pull it, fake it, they'll try running with it, but they fumbled on him even before they can, really start moving the football. What have you seen that's kind of been like, is there a catalyst for what's going on there? Is it just like he's rushing it, or what do you kind of see on just the fumbles in general? Because he also had that one earlier in the first half where he's, being taken down on a sack, and he's trying to throw it away and get the ball out of his hands, but it's called a fumble, and Alabama gets the football back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if that one in particular had been called an incomplete pass, they probably would have kept it on the field. I don't think they really saw enough either way to go with that. But it's interesting with fumbles because analytically speaking, fumbles are mostly luck. Now, always when we talk about analytics, we're talking about a bell curve. So we're talking about 98% of 98% of fumbles and anything else we're talking about analytically falls under this kind of category. There are the two extremes of like you have a guy that never fumbles or a guy that always fumbles. But fumbles are usually luck. And South Carolina's had a lot of bad fumble luck recently with, a play that both guys have probably done 100 times, 200, 300,000 times in their life. And then you get, fumbles on just a handoff, or it didn't even look on either of them. Maybe last week with Robbie Ashford, it didn't look like he was trying to pull it at the last second or he changed his mind or anything like that. It looked like it literally just hit the running back's elbow or something like that and fumbles. And so it's definitely something that, old school coaches will say like, oh, we're going to, tape the ball to his hands, or we're going to, make sure that this week we're extra hard with trying to knock it out. But there's only so much you can do to prevent fumbles other than just, kind of running it back. And you're going to get a couple more fumbles with a running quarterback like Lenore Sellers, but it's definitely something that needs to be fixed. And something that has hurt South Carolina this year.
No, it's definitely hurt South Carolina this year. And I think a big part of the fumbles are a result of the blocking he's getting, right? The pass protection, I don't think, and you can disagree or agree on this, Will, but I don't think the protection's been necessarily great for him. The offensive line obviously is up to, I think, like 26 sacks now, which is a real issue because you're only 15 away from the 41 you gave up last year. And we thought that was bad. I didn't think the blocking was particularly great by any means in that Alabama game. I think, especially coming off with the tackles, Case and Henry has struggled some this year for the most part. Josiah Thompson, it puzzled me that he was graded the highest of any South Carolina on PFF. But you go back and watch the tape. I mean, there were a lot of times where he's blocking these edge rushers coming off from Alabama, and it's like he's holding onto his block, and then he just lets them come free. What is it that you're seeing on the blocking? Like, what do you attribute to the struggles with these fumbles and the sacks and stuff? Is it all the offensive line? Is it a combination of everything? What do you think?
I think it's definitely, first of all, a combination of everything. But I think not all sacks are created equally. And we talk about sacks as a offensive line stat, but they're an offense stat. If your guys aren't getting open downfield, that's on the offense. You can have what we call coverage sacks or any things like that. But then you look at like analytically in the NFL, Russell Wilson for years and years and years and years and years was always top 1, 2, or 3 in most sacks. And people attributed it a lot to, well, we just need to get him more blockers. If we get him some more blockers, some good pass blockers, he'll come in Seattle, he will stop taking as many sacks. And then he gets traded to Denver and he's again number 1 in sacks. And you look at Seattle, and Geno Smith is like bottom 5 in sacks. And so it's definitely partially a quarterback stat. On Saturday, I think they were attributed with 4 sacks. One of them was, I think, Case and Henry got beat pretty quickly off the block and just gave up a sack there. But most of the other ones were Lenore Sellers either being a little bit timid with the ball or maybe not firing it in there when he could have, or stepping up in the pocket or things like that. And that's something that I think overall you can see getting a little bit better with. This year with the sacks, I think it's less an overall like issue that happens every single game and more an issue with it happens, they'll be great for 5 plays and then whip on a block on the 6th. And I think that that's something that can be really difficult for a quarterback because Spencer Rattler last year knew he was not going to have time. He would sit back there, he'd take his 3 steps, and he knew he had to get it out of there because every single play he'd get pressure. And this year, I don't think you're seeing that. I think you are seeing like some really good pockets. That touchdown to Mazio Bennett, Sellers could have stood back there for 10 seconds. He was totally fine. The throw that we saw later in the game, the pockets held up, and then every once in a while you'd see a play where somebody whiffs on a block and a guy gets in the backfield immediately. And so it's definitely something where I think Sellers does need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. I think the coaching staff in the second half did a better job of giving him opportunities to get the ball out quicker and kind of pushing him towards, hey, make your first read and throw the ball.
Yeah, with getting the ball out quicker, I thought he made a lot of good throws on Saturday, right? Obviously, the one that stands out is the Nick Harbor 31-yard touchdown pass to get within 2 points of tying the game in that fourth quarter. But there were also, and I know you noted this on Twitter, there were a lot of, I don't even want to call it a lot. There were a few key throws that maybe he just didn't see the guy. Like there's the one, I think it was Gage Larvin, you pointed out. It was like just over the middle, and Gage, I guess, was just running straight, and Sellers didn't see him. It probably would have been an open play. You also had Gage early in the game on a ball that Sellers threw that Gage dropped, and then the final play of the game that was the interception that Sellers threw. He had what I thought was Gage, but it's actually, I think, Vandrevius Jacobs open in the flat. And look, with 13 seconds left, I don't think you needed to take a shot to the end zone. I think you could have. You're only down by 2, so you need a field goal in that situation. But you instead tried to, try to strike twice with Harbor there, but instead, the ball got picked off and stuff. What do you make of the passing performance he had, on Saturday?
I think there's a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot to clean up. I think one thing that stands out is in going back and looking at some of the stats. When he was kept clean, he was 17 of 19 with I think 2 touchdowns and 200 yards or something like that. And the reason I point out when clean is because that's mostly the most stable quarterback metric. Even your best quarterbacks in the world are going to struggle under pressure. And some games they might do really well. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier earlier in the year had one of the best games I've ever seen out of, with pressure in his face. But when he was kept clean, Lenore Sellers was accurate. He made good throws, all that kind of stuff. I don't think the issue is arm talent, making the throw, anything like that. I think a lot of times there are just some keys with reading the defense that he's just not picking up yet as a redshirt freshman, and a redshirt freshman that missed all of his junior year of high school. So it's not just that he's young, and he's missed 1 year that a lot of other quarterbacks have had. So it's one of those things where it's frustrating. Our colleague Wes Mitchell pointed out, hey, this is what you get when you play a young guy. You get all the flashes, and then you also do get some of the growing pains and things like that. But I try not to hold that last throw against him. NFL quarterbacks struggle when there's 10, 15 seconds left. You just watch any college football game, and you'll see some crazy stuff happen in the last 20 seconds of the game. I try not to hold that against him as much, but there were definitely a couple throws that were there that he just didn't see.
No, most definitely. Look, that's a lot of pressure he's got on him. And the one throw I forgot to mention there was the 2-point conversion. And look, I mean, that I think was a situation where in the moment when you're watching it live, you're like, how did he miss that throw? How did he miss that throw? It's wide open. Vandrevius Jacobs ran a corner route, and it's right there for him, beat 2 defenders. Sellers just missed it by, quite frankly, a large margin. You go back and watch it, though, he's got a defender coming right in his face and stuff, and so he's got to get that ball out quick. And I think that's the big thing that we've talked about today is he's got to quit holding on to the ball for so long. He's got to get it out and stuff. What's kind of your evaluation of that last play there that you saw from Sellers on the 2-point conversion, and what do you feel like led to the misfire there?
I think it kind of sums up South Carolina in 2024. If you'll play really, really well most of the game, and then when it comes down to that one play, it doesn't go their way, or you have a mistake that hasn't really been a mistake this year. I think it's different if we're talking about Lenore Sellers has been inaccurate. He can't hit players on the run. He can't hit, open receivers. But that has not been an issue all year. I mean, when he throws the ball, he's been extremely accurate. Even some of his interceptions. I mean, people point out 4 interceptions, 2 of them off the top of my head. One should have been a roughing the passer call against LSU, and then one is in that late game where you're just like, hey, let's throw it up and hope that Carper can go get it. So he hasn't been inaccurate. He's been throwing it well. And then you just have that one throw where it's like, if you hit this, we can make it to overtime. This is the throw, and that's where it stalls out. And I think Gamecock fans were sitting there going, it's going to stall out at some point. When does it happen? And it just happened to be on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, and that's just, again, it's such an unfortunate play because it's like you had it right there. But again, just like you said, that kind of has been the summary of South Carolina's season is they've played pretty well in most of these games, probably besides the Ole Miss game. But look, they had a great chance to win that game and came up short. Switching gears a little bit here, talking about the defense now. I think there's a lot more positives to take away from the defensive performance. Again, I thought the offense played pretty well in this game. Again, just a few mistakes here and there. Defensively, I felt like they had the right game plan in mind where they knew Jalen Milroe was going to be running around the pocket and stuff and scrambling, dual threat kind of guy that you have a lot of, a lot on your plate to prepare for with him. What did you make of the way they were able to pressure him, and how much of a key do you feel like that was in getting him to make some tough throws?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I grew up a South Carolina fan. I went to South Carolina. My dad went to South Carolina, so I've been watching. I'm 28 years old, and I've still been watching since the Lou Holtz days. And I cannot remember another game. I mean, recency bias here, where South Carolina actually stopped a dual threat quarterback. It feels like no matter who the coach is, no matter who the defensive coordinator is, if there's a dual threat quarterback, he's going to run for 80 yards and a touchdown. And that didn't happen. There was, I think, one or two busts early in the game. But I think it just shows that you can't discount pressure and how effective pressure is at hurting other, quarterbacks. People would always say, like, hey, all you have to do to Tom Brady is pressure him, and then he's going to be off his game. Well, yeah, everybody's going to be off their game if they get pressured. And so the fact that South Carolina's defensive line has continuously been able to get pressure, even against the best of the best of the SEC, has got to be encouraging. Especially because the back end has been good enough, especially, Judge Collier, Bakari Swain, both of those guys were question marks coming into the season. They've been more than good enough to hold up long enough to let South Carolina get some pressure. And it's proof that no matter who the quarterback is, they're going to struggle if you can get in their face.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like kind of with the pressure, I mean, the players have talked about before just how much easier their jobs are, especially in the secondary, when these guys are able to really force some, bad throws from the quarterback. I mean, it's true. It makes their job so much easier out there when they're in coverage and they're going up against these guys. And look, they had a really tall task this weekend against Ryan Williams, who, 17 years old, making all the plays. He's scored a touchdown every game before this South Carolina one, but he was held in check. And the leading receiver for Alabama was a running back, Jeremy Bernard, who had 4 catches for 89 yards. We hear so much about how this DB room has come along this season and how well they've played, but we don't hear too much about, why, what is going into their success in their play. When you watch this team in that secondary, what stands out to you with the way they play?
Well, I think the number one thing is we've seen flashes of this in the past, that Torian Gray and Clayton White want to be aggressive on the outside. They want to play bump and run coverage. They want to get up there with their long corners and press and play a lot of man coverage. And then you mix in some zone here and there. And they just haven't been able to in the past because you can't play man if it's going to take you, 5 seconds to get the quarterback. But the pass rush this year has allowed them to be much more unique and much more aggressive in coverage because the pass rush is getting there. And there have been a couple coverage busts. Every team in the country has coverage busts. But with the elite pass rushers, you don't have to hold up as long on the outside. And if you don't have to hold up as long on the outside, you can take more risks. You can jump balls that, might be a double move or something like that. And you're usually going to be okay because the quarterback's not going to have time to find those deep over routes or those, long developing plays down the field.
Yep. And I think switching gears here a little bit to Oklahoma, I mean, do you even change what you've been doing that's been working so well on defense? Every quarterback's different. Michael Hawkins Jr. and Jackson Arnold, I would wager to say, are not on the same level as Jalen Milroe or even Jackson Dart, who they faced 2 weeks ago when Ole Miss was in town. Do you think they should be keeping things the same, or with bringing pressure and letting the DBs do the rest and linebackers and stuff? Or do you mix it up a little bit and change it depending on, who's at quarterback?
I think I would not be surprised if Clayton White brings a little bit more pressure early. I've talked about this a lot. I do a little bit of writing for some other publications where I have to cover, basically the whole country. And one of the question marks I had coming into the season was, how in the world is Oklahoma going to survive with a completely portaled offensive line? They brought in, I think, 4 or 5 guys that are either regular contributors on the offensive line or starters on the offensive line from different schools, and we've never seen that work. And so far this year, we still have not seen that work with Oklahoma. They're giving up pressure at a much higher rate than South Carolina is, at a much quicker rate than South Carolina is. And so it doesn't really matter for them who's back there. they've had regular defensive units in the backfield all the time. And so I'm going to be interested to see if Clayton White takes advantage of that and says, well, we've got four that can get pressure. We're just going to sit back and play coverage and let our four get pressure on them. Or if he's going to bring a couple blitzers early to see if he can really cause some havoc in the backfield, make Michael Hawkins looks like he's going to be the starter. Make him make some bad throws, really speed up his internal clock and try to get him off. I'm going to be interested to see that first or second series, what that looks like, and if they're going to play coverage or if they're going to, bring some extra guys.
Yeah, and speaking of the Oklahoma offense, now that we're going to start previewing a little bit of OU, I mean, look, offensively, you can comment on this. I don't think they've been that impressive this year. At the same time, it's kind of like South Carolina in a lot of ways where these are two teams that are very defensive driven. Obviously, Brett Venables, former DC at Clemson, has a lot of history there where he was, leading the Tigers to where they got to defensively in the mid-2010s. But now he's at OU. That school used to be, primarily offensive heavy, team when they were in the Big 12 all those years with Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley and stuff. It's kind of the opposite now. From what you've seen from the Sooners this year, just what do you make of their offense, and why do you feel like they really haven't been able to fully click this year, I guess?
I think so. They're going through kind of the same thing that South Carolina went through last year on the offensive line. They thought that the wide receivers would be good enough. They thought that they could surround their young quarterbacks with some talent. There are guys there that I've got a couple of people that said they weren't all that upset to lose Dylan Gabriel last year. They said they really like their quarterbacks this year, and they think they've got enough talent around them to be able to survive without them. All they have to do is portal the offensive line, and I think, one, the offensive line has not gelled, and then two, they have 5 or 6 of their top receivers that are injured. It looks like we'll see if Deion Burks plays. If he does, it doesn't look like he's going to be 100%. That's a lot of pressure when you lose your top 5 or 6 guys and you can't block. And so I think one of the things that is different about South Carolina's offense is South Carolina's offense has flashed the ability to run the ball consistently. They have flashed the ability to hit some deep pass plays down the field, and Oklahoma has not really done that. Now, there is a little bit of – they've played some tough defenses too, but South Carolina's played some really tough defenses that, that Oklahoma hasn't played. I mean, Houston's a pretty decent, okay Big 12 defense, and Oklahoma looked terrible against them early in the year. And people chalked it up to, maybe they just need some more time to gel, but they really can't get any sort of consistency on offense. South Carolina at least can run the ball a little bit sometimes if they really stick to the run and avoid negative plays. They can get enough going where, they can really get the offensive goal. We saw that with the first drive in the third quarter. But Oklahoma has not been good enough, even if they do avoid those negative plays, to consistently move the ball. And I think that's the biggest difference.
No, definitely. And look, for South Carolina's offense, like we said, it is going to be a challenge for them in this game. Like, just because their defense is great and stuff, and their offense is starting to come together a little bit, doesn't mean that Oklahoma is not going to be as good as well. I mean, this could be a game that comes down to 1 or 2 plays. Like, if your secondary gets beat or whatever, you might be screwed. But, Oklahoma defensively, they're not far behind in a lot of these metrics that South Carolina is ahead of them in. For the Gamecocks, I mean, look, they did a lot of good things in that game against Alabama, turnovers aside. What do you feel like is the biggest factor if South Carolina is going to win this game with their offense, so compared to their defense? What do you think it's going to take? Is it just reducing the mistakes? Is it running the football more? Is it getting Sellers more opportunities in the downfield passing game? Is it a combination of everything? What do you think?
I think those are really the 3 primary things. Oklahoma is very, very good at bringing pressure. They're very good at creating turnovers. But other than that, their defense is kind of average. So they have thrived off of the big play. So South Carolina is going to have to avoid allowing Oklahoma to have those big plays. If South Carolina gets into 3rd and 10s, they're not going to survive very often. If they are, getting 1 yard, 2 yards on first down, it's going to be really difficult for South Carolina to move the ball. That being said, Texas ran the ball decently well on Oklahoma when they actually stuck with the run last week. And then Oklahoma has given up a lot of big pass plays. And those are 2 things that South Carolina does well. They're not super explosive in the running game, but South Carolina's 3rd in success rate when running the ball. Basically meaning if you're trying to get 5 yards on first down, South Carolina's one of the best teams at doing that on first down in the running game. if you're trying to get 3 yards on third down, South Carolina's one of the best teams in the SEC to do that. And so I think for them, it's avoid the big mistakes. If you can just kind of slowly chip away, you'll see Oklahoma start to slide their safeties down, and then you've got some room over the top with some of these receivers that I think have not quite reached their potential at South Carolina yet.
No, most definitely. And final topic I want to talk about here is just the game itself. Go check out Will's story on GamecockCentral.com because he has a very interesting score prediction at the bottom that definitely I think is very interesting to see in how he expects this game to go. But talking about one of the topics you had in your story, there's 3 main points. Shane Beamer's tenure being one of them. I think a lot of people are going to think, Shane really hasn't done a great job at South Carolina. The recruiting's been great, but it's the on the field 23-21 record through, now you're in year 4. And it's like South Carolina seems to not have been able to take that next step yet, especially after the 2 big wins to end the 2022 regular season before the bowl game. I mean, what do you make of this year with Shane's, coaching performance and stuff? I thought his decision-making was a lot better this time around, especially at the end of the game when I think he was talking about it earlier in the week. Him and Joe DeCamillis were going back and forth on, do we change up the onside kick after calling the timeout? Do we do something different? And Shane's like, no, we're going to stay the same. So my point is, and my question is, what do you make of how Shane has done so far this year, and what do you feel like you need to see from him this weekend in OU?
Yeah, so I'm much lower on Oklahoma than I think a lot of people are. I think that this is a team that, especially given the back half of their schedule, really could fall off. And that's kind of awkward to say before South Carolina plays them because it kind of sets up for I think they should really beat Oklahoma. I think South Carolina's the more talented team, and I think that the matchups really favor South Carolina here. But one of the things that I've talked about in that article was just how so much of an early tenure with a coach is luck. And we talked about close games and how unless your name is Urban Meyer or Brian Kelly, your coach is probably going about 500 in close games. And that means on the micro scale, think about if you flip a coin, you might flip a couple losses in a row that could have been wins. Hi, I've got my 2-year-old sitting here.
It's okay.
So one of the things is if you flip a couple losses in a row, it looks a lot worse than it does. Imagine if South Carolina last year, and people are going to go the opposite way too. We can definitely go the opposite way. Imagine if they win one of those 2 one-score games that they lost. Well, now 6-6 and make a bowl game. Does it look different? Let's say South Carolina wins either LSU or Alabama this year. Those are 2 coin flip games that went against them. Do things look a little bit better? And so I think it's definitely something where we have to wait until the end of the season, especially because I did not think that South Carolina matched up well at all with Ole Miss. I was pleasantly surprised with how they played against LSU and Alabama, but I just really didn't think they matched up well with Ole Miss. So the rest of the year, I think there are some better matchups. I think they match up really well with Texas A&M. I think they match up really well. Eli Drinkwitz beating South Carolina every year aside with Missouri. I think that they can hold their own against Clemson. So if we're sitting here at the end of the year going, well, South Carolina was competitive and they lost 8 games, that looks a little bit different than, hey, South Carolina was competitive and they won 8 games and they might not be that far off.
Yeah, I don't really think they're that far off at all. I mean, again, this is a 3-3 football team that very well could be 5-1, and looking at this weekend being a potential game to lock up as a bowl bid. So, Will, I appreciate you hopping on and talking some Gamecock football. And again, you guys can go check out Will's analytics report, what to make of Lenora Sellers, Shane Beamer's tenure, and the Oklahoma matchup on GamecockCentral.com. But Will, before I let you go, I just want to let you plug anything you got going on, where people can find your work, and where they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, so you can follow me. I'm mostly on Twitter. That's mostly what I'm doing. That's W Helms 21. I do a lot of stuff on there. I've got to wear a lot of hats. I'm actually a teacher by trade, but I do a lot of tutoring and SAT stuff for high school athletes, and then also doing Prep Red Zone, North Carolina, which is high school recruiting, high school scouting for the state of North Carolina. I'll have some things where I cross over a little bit with Gamecock Central here towards the end of the season with that. And then I do some stuff with the College Football Network, which does a lot of analytics and metrics for stuff across the country. I use a lot of that stuff in my Gamecock Central articles. So You can find me on social media. Tell me how wrong I am about Lenore Sellers. Tell me how right I am, whatever. I just love when people comment and tell me what they think. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Will, I really appreciate you hopping on, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Will. And that was Will Helms, and I want to really thank him for hopping on and joining me today on GC Live. He did a fantastic job breaking things down. I'm also going to go ahead and comment here to where you can find him on Twitter, and you can go ahead and read his analytics story, which is currently on GamecockCentral.com right now. Again, Will does a wonderful job for us every week, so I want to thank him for hopping on. So without further ado, we got a little bit left to go in the show. Let's go ahead and talk about what the coordinators had to say. Because, if you thought we weren't doing that today, we certainly are. Dowell Loggains and Clayton White spoke to the media today. And look, this was I don't want to say I think it was a good press conference. Last week, to put in perspective, I think was a lot of accountability, right? A lot of things went wrong in that Ole Miss game, and they're answering the tough questions and stuff. Why did this go wrong? Why did that go wrong? Dowell Loggains was blaming himself for a lot of the mistakes on offense in that game. Clayton White, the defense played pretty well in that game. They gave you a chance, but obviously they didn't finish in some categories. And speaking of not being able to finish, that game against Alabama this past weekend, he kind of just said the defense needs to learn from the good, the bad, the ugly, and how to finish games. Because again, it's easy to forget that South Carolina had a 19-14 lead against the Tide in that fourth quarter and nearly were able to pull off the upset. Now, a lot of people are going to say that, oh, well, Jack, don't you remember O'Donnell Fortune had the pick in the end zone to preserve the 5-point lead, and then Lenore Sellers fumbled right after? Yeah, of course I do. But at the same time, it's like we also forget that Jalen Milrow had a wide open touchdown to Jeremy Bernard in the fourth quarter there to take a 27-19 lead, and that made it an 8-point game. And if you don't give up that touchdown 3rd and 10, we're talking about maybe a different game here. So I think the point is that the defense obviously looked great in the game. Like, so many good things happened. You gave up 27 points to a really good offense, and you kept South Carolina in that game to the end. And that's how it's going to be, I think, throughout the rest of this year. But it definitely starts with being able to finish games. And likewise, on offense, there's a lot more to talk about here. I think when you look at Lenoris and the fumbles and stuff, Dell was giving a lot of comparisons to Peyton Manning and his rookie year with the Indianapolis Colts, where he led the NFL in turnovers and stuff. And he said it took 7 years for him to get to a playoff game. So obviously, Peyton Manning, I don't even know if that's really a great comparison, to be honest, because Peyton Manning's a one-of-one quarterback. And how many times do you see a guy lead the NFL or college football in turnovers and interceptions and stuff, and then go on to have a Hall of Fame career, right? Like, how often does that really happen? And I'm not saying Lenore Sellers was not a good quarterback by any means. I think he's a great quarterback with a lot of potential. But again, I think we're still seeing him take steps. And I think the step that we saw on Saturday, at least for Dowell and that offense, was the passing game. Like, he made a lot of mistakes, but there was a lot to be happy with in that game. And Dowell put it bluntly, like, there's no chance they even are in that game and have a chance to win that game without Lenore's play. So, and look, I think there's a lot to be excited about with Sellers. I think some of the criticisms and people saying that this guy stinks and he's not a good quarterback and the Sellers experiment is over and all this and that, complete overreaction. It's overkill, quite frankly. And it's really ridiculous. Like, it's 6 games into his first year as a starter. Like, come on, let's give the guy a little bit of time to really settle in here. If this is the same case in 2 years or whatever, okay, different story. Have at your criticisms. Although I think going after a guy is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. But have it your way. But my point is, it's not a final product yet. Like, Sellers did a lot of great things in that game. Like, are the turnovers a key reason why South Carolina lost this game? Yeah, I would wager to say so. But at the same time, it's like he did a lot of great things. And Carolina Titan makes a great point. Sellers is just young and taking his lumps, of course. You don't think this guy's going to learn from the mistakes he's made? You think he's going to make the same mistake twice with the 2-point conversion? As bad, I don't even want to say bad, but just as misfired of a throw as he made on that 2-point play. Like, if he misses the next time, I expect it to be just something that gets broken up on a great throw. But I think he's going to learn and be so much better from this type of game. Like, he was this close to beating number 7 Alabama at Bryant-Denny. And Shane Beamer brought up a great point the other day. Like, can anyone tell me how many quarterbacks have gone into Bryant-Denny Stadium and beaten Alabama on their home turf? Like, obviously Johnny Manziel, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton. I know people have said Savell Newton as well, which Shane didn't mention, I think from like 2004 or something. So there have been a lot of quarterbacks that have gone, or not even actually, I take that back. It's kind of sparse to see how many quarterbacks have gone into Tuscaloosa and beaten the Tide. It's a tough task, and a lot of times you're going to come out unsuccessful. So the fact that Sellers got that close to doing it, combined with a great defensive performance and some good efforts by the run game and receivers and stuff, I think this team's close. All right, and they've talked about it a lot this week. Like, they're on the doorstep of knocking the door down and taking over and having a complete game, but they're not that far off, in my opinion. I think they are definitely getting there. It's just limit the mistakes, I think, is the big thing, and we'll see what happens. And this is another key play that Travis brings up. That incompletion to Gage was such a fantastic individual play on Lenore's part. Absolutely agree. And in case you missed that game, I'll try to explain it the best I can. Can't remember when the game it was. It was definitely in the first half, I believe. But South Carolina's on their own side of the field, and it's like I don't even remember what down it was, but it was a play where Sellers is about to get swallowed up for a sack, and he manages to break out of it, and then on the run, last second, makes a great throw, perfect throw nearly to Gage Larvadain. And sure, you could say maybe it should have hit him a little closer and not been so out of reach. I think it was right on the money, honestly. I think it was more so just and Travis brings up second quarter. Thank you. Appreciate it. I think it was just more so Gage not hauling it in. Like, that. It's either a touchdown or it's like a 40, 50-yard bomb that, he goes out of bounds or whatever. Like, he had no one in front of him, right? It was just guys behind him. And if he makes that catch, maybe we're looking at a different game. But again, there's so many what ifs in this game. It's the 2-point conversion. It's the 13 seconds left. Can you take a shot on a deep ball when maybe you could have gone out of bounds or sideline to sideline? I'm not sure. But the point is, there's a lot of reasons why South Carolina lost that game. But I think I honestly don't think Alabama beat South Carolina. I think it's more so South Carolina beat South Carolina. I feel like that's what we're saying a lot here so far this year. And there's a real argument to be made that South Carolina should be 5-1 right now. And I totally agree. Like, again, the penalties in that LSU game really cost South Carolina. Like, warranted or not, whatever the case might be, they still had 13 penalties, and they had a 17-0 lead and didn't take full advantage of it. And then the Alabama game, like the non-penalty on the missed field goal that Travis brings up. And again, Chris Clark had a great tweet about this that kind of, I think, sparked everyone's interest in watching it back. And you're like, man, like, that's a penalty. And what I'm talking about is on Alex Herrera's 51-yard field goal that he missed. Alabama, like, I think they leaped over a defender, but they pushed off on top of a South Carolina guy, and that kind of caused a little bit of the riff of hey, isn't that a penalty? But and Travis brings up another great point. Great points all around today, Travis. It's a game of evenly matched teams. That fortune just wasn't on our side. Yeah, agreed. You had a chance to win this game and you couldn't finish it, and part of it is just your own mistakes. Part of it is just bad luck. And look, it's a tough situation to be in, and I can see why a lot of you, probably don't believe in this team right now. And they're 3-3 and all this and that, but they've got a great opportunity this weekend to go into a great environment. It's gonna be a whiteout at OU. It's gonna be a good game there. I'll be there. First time going to Oklahoma in general. But I think South Carolina's got a great chance to wrap up this month in strong fashion and not have another winless October, because that would be 2 years in a row. If they lost this game, you'd have no wins in October. So, and Steven brings up a good point. I believe once they knock that door down, they're going to run through it and get on a winning streak, maybe the rest of the games. That's the thing, guys. South Carolina, like I said before, they aren't far off. Once they I do think they can knock that door down. And when they do, they're going out here and competing with, your LSUs, your Alabamas of the world. Like, they're competing with the big dogs in the SEC. They're just not finishing these games off like maybe we would have hoped. And that's okay. Like, it's going to happen. I think you're going to get there eventually. But I think it's a great sign that, yeah, you had an ugly loss to Ole Miss, but and there are no moral victories, but you played a lot better against a great team at their place, and you gave a lot of, I guess, hope, like optimism that, hey, this team isn't dead in the water yet. They're a bunch of fighters, like they said, and they got a great chance to go out here and win any game. And again, I feel really good about my season predictions overall. 8-4. This is a game I have South Carolina winning in my predictions going all the way back to August. And it would not shock me if they win this game. They go into November, just like I thought, 4-3. And they get on a little bit of a roll here and lose one game somewhere along the way, but they end up 8-4 on the year. That would not shock me. At the same time, it wouldn't shock me if South Carolina went out here and lost this game and then just kind of spiraled out of control after that. Again, you never know what you're going to get with this football team. In all the years we've probably watched South Carolina at this point, like, it really is just, I mean, they got to find consistency. I think that's the main thing for them, and we'll see what happens. This Oklahoma team is kind of, I don't know how to feel about them. They're kind of like a mixed bag a little bit, just like South Carolina. Like, they just got blown out by Texas in the Red River rivalry game. This is an offense that, no Jackson Arnold right now. That's a guy that probably is going to redshirt for sure and potentially transfer. And you got Michael Hawkins under center, who I don't think has been has he been that good? Like, he played all right against Tennessee, but like, his numbers are just not that impressive. And I think, the run game hasn't been great. They don't have much of an offensive line. The receivers are a little banged up. Like, there's a lot of problems with Oklahoma's offense right now. And I think South Carolina has less problems. Again, the thing for the Gamecocks always has been limit the mistakes. You did a good job limiting the penalties last week against Alabama, but you had the turnovers. So what is it going to be this week? Is it going to be more penalties? Is it going to be turnovers less? Like, are we going to actually see both be pretty minuscule? And I think if you get that down, you figure out what is going on and how you can limit these mistakes. I'm not saying you're going to win, but like, you very well should win this game. Like, I'll just be honest. Like, I don't think Oklahoma is all that, but I do think South Carolina is the better football team, and they should win this weekend. I don't care if it's in Norman. Like, South Carolina is right there, guys. I mean, it's literally right in front of them. They got to go out and take it. And with this defense, they have a chance almost every time. So, I think they really do have a great chance to win this game, and we'll have to see what happens. And if you guys want to drop any of your predictions for this game below, would be interested to hear what you guys think about this game. But also, speaking of predictions, projections, all that sort of stuff, I want to talk to you guys about our good friends over at Prize Picks. So if you do not know much about Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players per stat projections. And then, of course, you watch the winnings roll, and Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app out there. I've used Prize Picks a ton in the past. I've used it for college football, NFL, NBA, college basketball. MLB postseason is going on right now, so I know there's a lot of good things going on right now, and it's not even just limited to the main sports. It's hockey. There's a bunch of other ones out there, so would highly recommend using it. And so if you are inclined, just go to prizepicks.com or download the Prize Picks app, and you can use the code GC on screen that stands for Gamecock Central to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. And we want to thank Prize Picks for being a wonderful sponsor of our GC Live programs. And so that is about to do it for today's episode of GC Live. And I like this prediction, Carolina Titan, 31-10. Gamecocks kick the door in finally. I feel it. I'm feeling it. I'm not saying there's going to be a blowout win by any means, but I'm feeling a win here. I'm feeling like South Carolina. I mean, you guys can see my staff picks predictions at the end of the week. I haven't even thought about a score yet or anything, but I'm just very confident that South Carolina is going to learn from what went wrong last week and get the job done. And a great point William Jones makes. This Carolina defense is very, very legit. And again, this is Oklahoma. Like, Oklahoma's got a great defense too. But I think South Carolina is just a better football team. Records are not reflective in how these teams match up. Like 4-2 Oklahoma versus 3-3 South Carolina. I would take my money on South Carolina, and that's just not because I cover the team and stuff. I see things the way they are. I do think when it's all said and done Saturday, we're going to be talking about a Gamecock win on Sunday reset, which I got no idea what time I'm going to be going live for that show. I'm in a little bit of a weird situation on Sunday where I'll be in Oklahoma still. It's not like I'm not driving. That's for sure. I don't even want to know how long of a drive that is. But I definitely will be flying back, and I'll be flying back from Oklahoma City to Charlotte kind of later on Sunday. So we might be doing a little bit of an early edition of Sunday Reset on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. Maybe we'll do Saturday after the game. I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out, and we'll have a good time talking about South Carolina football against Oklahoma. Win, lose, or draw. It's going to be a good time. Hope you all tune into that, as we'll have a lot to talk about as South Carolina will go into the bye week after this. And, so the Gamecocks will be in action on Saturday afternoon, 12:45 p.m. on SEC Network. For the people out in OU like myself, it'll be Central Time, 11:45 p.m. or a.m. Oh, God, 11:45 p.m. Can you imagine? That's Pac-12 after dark right there. But so it should be a great game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a low-scoring affair, but I definitely do think South Carolina has everything they want out in front of them still, and they can definitely run the table here if they start racking up some wins. But it's got to start this weekend. So that is going to do it for today's episode of GC Live. Again, I'll be going live at some point this weekend on Sunday, probably on Sunday Reset, of course, and we'll have a lot more thoughts to break down from this game after it all goes down. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all coverage, live updates. I'll be riding out there solo this weekend, so definitely should be a great time. Appreciate you guys all tuning in, and I will see you guys on Sunday Reset. Have a great rest of your week, guys, and I'll see you.